There was a report over the weekend from Rap Sheet, I think, saying he expects some fireworks and the time to spend is now. How confident are you that AP will change his approach this free agency season and spend some real money?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know where I can put myself on the confidence scale right now, and sort of that report is an example of kind of what I'm talking about. I think we all probably think logically that Rapoport's not wrong. I mean, not only does Washington have a ton of cap space, they'll get even more whenever they release Marshawn Latimore, but based on the first two seasons with Peters, it's not like he's gone hardcore in free agency. He's been willing to take on bigger contracts like Tunsil or Deebo in trades, or Latimore too, but not. They should be very aggressive, but I can't sit here and say that's definitely going to happen. But which is why, again, I'm excited for next week when hopefully we get some more details. Read between the line stuff, even whatever, to get a feel. But logically, they're going to have to spend, especially when you only have the 5 draft picks.
Ben, I was trying to think through this the other day. They need a lot to improve the defense from this year. If they go into free agency and they make a splash move or two, one of them is a defender. I've seen Quay Walker linked to them. ESPN put an article about that. So maybe they go sign a guy like a Quay Walker or take your pick of one of the edge rushers, and then they draft an impact guy at pick number 7 on the defensive side of the football. But if that's the extent of like the big-time moves, they'll make some supplemental things like another edge rusher or another corner, but not big-time impact guys. Do you think that's enough with Durante Jones taking over the new scheme? Do you think one free agent that's a big time impact guy and pick number 7 as an impact guy on defense with Durante Jones? Do you think that's enough to fix this thing?
No disrespect to Durante Jones, who I have no idea how good he will be, but we'll see. No, I do not think that. I mean, let's just say that for argument's sake that they get, I'm making this up, Trey Hendrickson in free agency, and they draft, whether it's Ruben Bain or Caleb Downs, like somebody that everybody would be happy with. You still have massive depth issues all over the place. We still don't know what would happen at linebacker, cornerback. Trey Amos, after that, it starts feeling a little bit unsettled, even with Mikey Sitter still, because it's been a bit of an up and down time for him. So, no, they need so much more that, I don't know that a couple guys are going to matter, which is also why, I've started to talk about this on my podcast this week, which I'm using both to hopefully inform listeners, but also as a bit of my own therapy session, is is there a world where it makes more sense to go harder on offense, strengthen a strength? I mean, we act like the offense is, if Jaden Daniels is healthy, they're fine. And that's somewhat true, but they still have a lot of, other than McLaurin, in terms of skill players, I mean, what are we looking at here? That we don't know what they're doing at tight end. We all like what Bill did last year, but I don't know that we can say he's definitively a number one guy. He also still have so many other holes that maybe it just makes more sense to go the offense, focus on depth with defense, build it up from that perspective. Don't get me wrong, the defense was terrible last year. That's been not great the first 2 years. They need a ton more help, but is it better to go hardcore to one way than piecemeal it both ways? That's kind of what I'm trying to ponder here a little bit.
For me, to that vein, I wonder if you do add 3, maybe 4 presumed starters defensively, if that frees up number 7 to pursue Jeremiah Love or one of these receivers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I agree with you that 2 years ago when they were good, people act like the defense was so much better. It wasn't. It was bottom 5 in most statistical categories except turnovers. They were middle of the pack in turnovers, so they created more opportunities for Jaden. What their strength was, Jaden in averaging 30 a game.
And time of possession.
Right. But you can't just re-sign Treylon Burks and think this receiver room is good enough. I think whether it's, I don't know that they're going to spend top dollar for a dude like Alec Pierce or Jawan Jennings, but if you're getting Romeo Dobbs or, you know what I mean? I think you've got to do more in that receiver room.
Yeah, I agree. Also, not only do you need more help, I think it's important to have somebody who is along for the ride with Jaden Daniels longer term. Terry McLaurin, we recall last year that being over 30 is a bad thing, says the guy who's way over 30. So, who knows how much longer Terry will either be here or be, still at a top level. Not saying he's done. I'm just saying, we don't know. And even if they go out and get, pick your free agent receiver, is that guy necessarily going to be here when Jaden Daniels is ascending? If you draft a rookie at, say, number 7, whether it's Carnell Tate or Jordan Tyson or pick your one, that guy could be here with Jaden Daniels going a long time forward. And I think that's important, right? You want to develop that connection with your quarterback and a top receiver. So I think it's also important from that angle. Again, it's too bad they don't have the second round pick. We understand they don't. So it's the first and the third as it stands right now. And that to me wouldn't be a bad way to go at all. Again, best player available, who's there, what do they do in free agency, all that. But yes, if they do go defense in free agency, that should open things up to sign a skilled player on offense. And again, a receiver, I think that's not a bad way to go long term.
One of the things I'm excited to watch this offseason, because I think it'll tell us a little bit more about Adam Peters, is this Tunsil negotiation and getting a new contract. One, I wouldn't assume that you have any reservations about doing that. I think he played really well this year, but if you do, feel free to say. Also, do you think this thing gets done and we don't have the Terry saga and you can just go into training camp knowing that he's going to be your left tackle?
Yeah, I certainly don't have an issue with re-signing him, and I was very much like I think most of us, God, nothing to see here with Terry. It'll be fine. Logically, they'll get this thing done. Obviously, that did not exactly happen. I think one difference is that Adam Peters did not sign. He did not draft Terry McLaurin. He didn't sign him initially. He was here, and that's not to say that he doesn't believe he was a good player. Obviously, they did, give him some good money in that extension. But Laramie Tunsil is his move. He traded all these picks to get this guy, and they kind of made it pretty clear. He said he's right. Didn't he say at the end of the year he's arguably the best left tackle in football? Mm-hmm. You can't say that and then go into the negotiation and be like, we're going to only pay you like the 10th best guy. So I have to imagine this gets done for those reasons. On top of the fact that again, Laramie Tunsil had a really, really good year. You want to protect Jaden Daniels. It seems like he was a pretty good guy when it comes to helping Josh Connerly and Brandon Coleman, et cetera. So, yeah, to me, this should be a no-brainer. But you're right. If there is any kind of sticking point, then that's, brings into question whether this is a no-brainer. But after last year, I don't think I was willing to step out like that.
Dude, I tend to agree with you. The Tunsil thing, I got to see it to know it's getting done, right? Because we thought the same. And if you go back to San Fran, even with their guys that are studs, it's usually contentious. It goes to camp. I mean, Trent, Bosa, that's how they've operated there, and that's where AP was most recently. We saw they got the Tressway deal done, right? And that was able to fit into this little kind of contractual clause within the cap for veteran players where if you have 4 years of service with the same team, the full number doesn't count. So, getting Tress done made all the sense in the world, right? The Tunsil thing's way different because it's not going to be 1 year, $4 million. It's going to be, Tunsil probably wants guaranteed money into a third season, is my guess. And you're talking 30.
Well, and he's self-repped, so does that add in some of the complications there?
That might make things simpler than it did with Terry, honestly. I don't know that answer, but what do you think the timeline is with Tunsil?
You can tell me a deal gets done before this conversation ends. You can tell me it happens when we're in Indy, or you can tell me it lingers until we get a lot closer to the draft or free agency. Again, he is, like Terry, he's not a free agent. He's still under contract. So, is there urgency from either side to hurry up and get this thing done? Maybe it makes sense for Tunsil to see how the free agent market plays out, not in terms of leaving, but just to see, what are the numbers out there. But he's already right now, I think he's fourth or fifth highest paid left tackle in the league in terms of the annual average salary. So just simply even just keeping the numbers the same, he's still way, way up there. Does he need to be the highest paid? I don't necessarily know what his hopes and dreams are on that front. It seemed like he was pretty happy here. So signing a longer-term deal to lock himself in doesn't seem like a bad way to go. But, who can say for sure? But there should be a certain amount of urgency, just nothing else, is to know, okay, we have all this cap space now. We've given a chunk of it over here to Tunsil, so now we know what we're working with. But, maybe like I said, it could happen tomorrow. It could happen right before the start of free agency. But after the start of free agency, to me, would be start to get a little concerning.
Yeah, man. And then, like, the Latimore release has to happen soon. Like, what are we waiting on for that? You know what I'm like? There's no way you're keeping him. Between what we saw on the field, the numbers, some of the off-field stuff, there's no way. What is the delay?
Yeah, I mean, like we saw Miami the other day release a bunch of guys, including Tyreek Hill, but they released like several guys simultaneously. So I guess they were just ready. Okay, we've done our math, we've done our homework, we're ready to go forward. I guess perhaps Washington is just looking to, rather than piecemeal things out, looking to determine how they want to handle everything and then just make one big move going forward. I mean, so like even looking at. Well, actually, that part doesn't matter. Yeah, so it could just be that. I mean, I think we all agree it's going to happen. I don't know if there's any tactical reason to wait other than, like I said, just to have all your mental ducks in a row about what you want to do, who's staying, who's going to a degree, and then just do it all kind of at once. But, yeah, eventually I don't see why this isn't happening. But, yes, I can't comprehend that it's not going to happen. If it doesn't happen, we'll be all shocked. So it'll happen sooner than later, I would have to imagine.
Another guy that AP traded for this past offseason, Deebo Samuel, going to be a free agent. I think just about every Commanders fan, if you said you could get him back for free, would do it. But for the number that he's going to ask, do you think it makes sense to bring him back for the value he brings the offense, also getting a new offensive coordinator and trying to figure out if he fits exactly what Blau wants to do?
For me, the answer to that is no. I'm not discounting Deebo the player. I thought he was the best player in training camp. I thought he was arguably the best player the first 4 or 5 weeks of the year. That Chargers game, which was the highlight of the season, Deebo and Bill were really impressive in that game, and then unfortunately he got hurt, and then a little kind of came down a little bit. The problem is what he does is more of a luxury than a staple, and he's not a true outside receiver. He's a guy you obviously can play here, there, and everywhere. Use him in the backfield. You get to see some yak, all these kinds of things. But they need more grounded pieces. Like this offense just had not. I mean, what did we see? I think the real turning point in this season, from a tactical perspective, was Week 6. The Bears decided to start playing their corners tighter to the line, basically daring Washington to throw the ball down the field. In part because they didn't have anybody that could do it. It's not like Washington could just line up Deebo and say, here, you do the Terry thing now and play the X, and we'll throw you the ball and make those plays down the field. If he's just a different type of guy, I just don't, to me, that is just too much of a luxury for where they are. Now, look, if you say they sign Deebo and then, as we discussed before, have plans to use that 7th pick on a receiver, okay, well, all of a sudden now you have Terry, Deebo, and that rookie. That's a really tough receiving trio to deal with, but again, to me, I just feel it's a little too much of a luxury. They need more stuff, and that his stuff is fun, but it is just not a staple of an offense, in my opinion.
Talking with our friend Ben Standig here on the Rude Guest Hotline. You can give Ben a follow at Ben Standig. Check out his work at Last Man Standig. One thing I wanted to ask you about, and you do a good job of these surveys, the agent survey. You always have good ones. You surveyed a bunch of guys in the locker room about some different topics, right? And you asked around on who was the most athletic in the Commanders' locker room. What were the results of that?
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. I mean, there was no definition of athleticism. People could decide whatever they work for, whether that's 40 time. People like Ben Sinnott were like, I think if you play multiple sports, that counts, considering he played not 1, not 2, but 6 varsity sports in high school. The size factor, what Laramie Tunsil was able to do at, 6'5", 313, had he factored that into what Mikey Sanderson is able to do at whatever he is, 5'9", $190, something like that. The winner, though, it's not surprising when you look at it purely from like an Olympics type of perspective, like a decathlete, and that was Tyler Owens. He like literally has like records. Like he had his like broad jump at the combine was like off the charts for a guy at his size. He's able to run 100 meters in like around 10 seconds. He says he can run a 4.240. He didn't do that at the combine, but I'm not going to doubt him. He says he can bench like or max out like 600 pounds. So he was the winner. But Larry Tunsil, people gave credit to the big guy for his ability the way he could move and physically dominate people. That should not be plausible for a guy of that size. But like there were a lot of other guys that got mentioned all the way around, including your guy Tressway. Although for Tress, some of it was an acknowledgement of he's the king of the backyard games. More than say we're talking about his bench. But it was a fun conversation. I think probably my favorite part, JP, was also when I would ask the question and several guys just flat out were like, well, you're me, right? Like, obviously the answer is me.
Right.
And I was like, okay, what's your case? And they were very confident. They gave a case as to why it would be them, and I didn't let them vote for themselves ultimately. But, it is interesting to look at it. How do you compare a 300-pounder versus a defensive back versus a tight end? They're very different body types, but all these guys are obviously elite athletes, no doubt about it.
Don't sleep on Tress, though, man. I played enough golf with that dude. The hand-eye is very real.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny with Tyler Owens, and then that's a dude Durante Jones actually brought up when he talked about the versatility and how he likes guys that can do a lot of stuff. This offseason just feels fascinating, and I think everybody's waiting for big moves. You did mention Hendrickson earlier. How realistic do you think we see Hendrickson in burgundy and gold? I mean, you're probably paying that dude $25-30 million.
I don't know we can say it's realistic. I mean, one, the Bengals could tag him again and he's not even really on the market, or two, a lot of teams could easily want the guy who was the leader in sacks in the NFL in 2023 and 24. My sense was that Washington did have interest in him last offseason when he was available, but then of course, they make the Tunsil trade, they trade for Deebo, and that pretty much saps them from draft capital at that point. But on the one hand, they need to get younger, so going with the 31-year-old guy coming off injuries doesn't sound that way, but he is also incredibly productive. From a culture fit, I think he would be great. So if they want to go, top shelf, he's arguably the number one free agent in the entire class. So that would be a way to go, and that would be Adam Peters saying, okay, stop asking if I'm going to spend. Here we go. Let's do this. And they could use it. But, again, they're not the only team that's going to want that. And at some point, the bidding could get out of hand. But, I think it's something they absolutely have to look into.
Well, and Ben, I don't necessarily agree with this logic, but it's some of the thought process there that if you go with an older guy, because the free agent class isn't necessarily thought to be the best, instead of going with a Mafe or an Owe who is a little bit more unproven, I can sign a guy who's a little bit older, which this team has done and people have criticized, but I might only have to sign him to a 2 or 3 year deal, and hopefully I draft a guy that I can develop and eventually is the next guy, and by the time that Jaden's big money comes onto the books, this guy's coming off of it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think to that larger point, this is we're running out of time with the Jaden Daniels rookie contract. So if you do want to go a bit nuts, start spending like me and JP in Vegas or something, this is the time to do it. So you're right. If it's the difference between signing a guy like that for 3 years versus a younger guy for 4, yeah, you can make the case. It's often the years that's more of the issue than the money.
For me, with Hendrickson, it's about not guaranteeing anything in year 3. If it's I got to guarantee everything in years 1 and 2, like I'm cool with that. The number's going to be the number. The cap has exploded. But I think to me, it's about if a team gives them year 3 guarantees.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's all fair. That's the thing. It just takes one team. And look, obviously, Hendrickson's got out, he's getting to the back end of his career. I imagine he wants to play for a ring. So if a bad team is offering the most money, is that what he wants, or does he really want a better shot to win? And how would Washington factor in? But it just takes one team to offer up stupid money and crazy terms, and then all of a sudden we can't do that, or you decide, the heck with it, we are going to do it. So yeah, but I'm with you in general though. But this is also the thing, like when we put parameters on, like I don't want to do this or that. I'm not saying that's wrong by any stretch, but this is also then when you don't get some guys because other teams are going to kind of just go for it at different points. And look, this is not considered to be a great free agency class in general. If you look at the defensive ends, you got Hendrickson, Jalen Phillips from the Eagles, and then there's guys. There's some interesting players, but it's not necessarily obvious players. And I bet that whoever's like the third or fourth defensive ends kind of, off that free agent board, I bet they get overpaid because of the fact that that's such an important position and you're lacking options. So, you got to go out and be bold, not be scared, and make the right moves. But hopefully, don't put yourself in a position where you're really regretting things down the line.
Speaking of being bold, you said that Tyler Owens bench pressed 600 pounds. I think you mean deadlift or some other sort of.
Oh, deadlift, yeah.
That's very bold.
yeah,
that would be something.
As you can probably tell from that, I haven't actually lifted a weight in a while. So, apologies for the wrong terminology.
All good. Thanks for the time, Benny. See you next week.